So the Snowplow community is really important to Snowplow and important. It's been important from day one. And an awful lot of what Snowplow the company does is behind trying to improve the platform that we give to the community and better enable as many people in the world as possible to have sort of behavioral data strategies and happy data teams. I'll just ask the question, like, what does Snowplow really do? And I think what we at the crux of what we do is to give data teams the tools that they need to answer complex questions, or to Alex's point, do really sophisticated use cases around AI and kind of reactive processes based on behavioral data. And for that to be true, for that to be possible, they need something like Snowplow powering it. So the community is a great avenue for us to try and spread that message and spread that value. So for anyone who's not aware of who I am, my name's Steve. I'm VP Engineering at Snowplow. I've been with Snowplow for a few years, and I actually joined with a long history of, which I just shared with the breakout room, not in data, but of pissing off data teams by giving them crap data and asking them impossible questions. So I was very well qualified to come in and start solving that problem, and very galvanized around solving that problem for as many people as possible. But there's certainly been some challenges with the way that we set up the Snowplow community, and challenges that we've been working a lot over the last year to overcome. And that we want to bring a new plan into 2022 in terms of how we can better enable and further grow the Snowplow community. I was going to ask for the next slide then. I forgot I was sharing. So to kick off with I came in to try and make a difference to data teams world over, and I want to take a moment just to remind you of everything, for anyone who's in the community already, for what we've achieved so far. So we have the third highest adopted tracker globally, 9,600 GitHub stars across our orgs, and 5,500 discourse visits. That was in January, but January I think it was actually a little bit lower. I probably could have gone further back and got some higher numbers, but they're all indicative of a very active community. A lot of people are out there using Snowplow technology, and we are making a difference to data teams world over. So I think it's worth just pausing on that. Even though we have room to grow and we have more things we can do, we're already making a big difference. And we're really here to, as I said, make data teams happy and give them the tools that they need to be the heroes in their organization, to be able to feed into the best decision-making processes or build solutions that are out there making customer experiences far better and driving the value in the business. So it's really important that we do that, and we believe that we do that through providing them with high quality behavioral data. We want them to focus on the way that they solve those problems for their business, rather than necessarily focusing too much on the technology itself. That's why with open source we can give people a great leg up to be able to take those components, take those strategies, and start having an impact in their business as early as possible. That's the ambition, but the reality over the last period is that we've set a very high bar. To get started with Snowplow, just to feel Snowplow for the first time, you may have needed some prerequisite infrastructure knowledge. You need a lot of time available to you to go through our Power Docs to find out how to set up your first Snowplow pipeline. And a lot of people were relying on the docs, which I'll be honest, we've got room for improvement in the docs. There's definitely some treatment that's going to happen there over the next year or two. We really want to be in a position where we have industry-leading docs, and we have very active forums, which is good. So if something's not covered there, then there is a place to get an answer to your question. But it's not really the streamlined experience that we want for people getting involved in the Snowplow community. So we've been working on that journey. And one of the things that we've done over the last year is put together something that we call Try Snowplow. So Try Snowplow is it's now actually a hosted service. It used to be that you provide your own sub account and we would deploy it into the sub account people, but now it's all fully hosted our side. It takes about 5 minutes to stand up your first Snowplow pipeline, and you need no infrastructure knowledge in order to be able to do that. It's slightly restricted. It doesn't do a lot of things that a full Snowplow pipeline would do, but it lands that first Snowplow data that you've collected from your solution, whatever it is, into a Postgres database. So you can start to see the difference between the data that you're working with today to the data that you could be working with if you had a Snowplow pipeline powering your behavioral data strategy. So we've seen a lot of uptake of it, and we have seen people join the community as a result of it. I can see actually Joe's on the call, and I think Joe, you started with Try Snowplow, and now Joe is super supportive in the forums for us as well. So it's great to see it as an on-ramp into the open source community. It's time limited at the moment because it costs us money to run, but we are looking at ways to be able to extend the Try experience to help people to stay with it a little bit longer. So that'll be something to watch out for this year. Another solution that we have, people who really want to stand up a full Snowplow pipeline but don't want to spend 2 weeks going through our Power Docs, is a quick start installation guide. So I've snapshotted the one on AWS. We have one for GCP as well. So for this, you need roughly an hour to stand it up, and enough infrastructure confidence to press a button on the automations that we give people. And essentially, it's a set of automations that we have for setting up a vanilla Snowplow pipeline. But it has all of the features in there. You can have custom schemas, you can customize the enrichments, you can load to Postgres, but I can't remember if we've released it yet, but there will be options to load into other destinations in the near term as well. So plenty of opportunity there to start serving your first use cases. There are still some problems with or challenges to overcome with Quick Start. It's not highly scalable. It won't be highly resilient unless you do a lot of other things to get it there. But it is ready there to serve your first Snowplow use case. So we've been able to take it over the last year from a process that would have needed a lot of prerequisite infrastructure knowledge and a couple of weeks of a very determined set of people who would be able to go through our Power Docs. We brought it all the way down to an hour to stand up your first open source Snowplow pipeline and start experiencing the difference between a Snowplow behavioral data strategy and anything that was there before. So yeah, we've effectively lowered the bar to joining the Snowplow community. I'm really excited by that. I think it's going to have a big impact. But as I was just saying to the breakout session, the next challenge we have is still the why. Like, we're still asking for someone to invest some time in this. And to get the why going, we really want to hear from people in the community about the problems that they're solving with Snowplow. We know that there's some really interesting use cases, really interesting challenges that can be overcome using high quality behavioral data. But the big shame is that our community may be, we believe it's at least thousands large. It could even be tens of thousands large. We know very little about the problems that the problems that the open source community are overcoming and the successes they're having. And if we can find a way to surface those, and I know that Eddie and Jackson are looking at ways that we can do this to get more stories out there about how to use Snowplow effectively within your organization. If we can do that paired with a low bar to entry, we really hope that we can drive the community growth this year. And there's a lot of reasons to drive the community growth. We really lean on the community. What we're building here at Snowplow, for anyone who's not aware, is a very highly configurable thing. It can do lots of things for lots of different people. It's great to see in the community when someone hits a use case and they say, hey, we're tracking these types of events at these velocity and from these places, and we've hit a problem. We learn so much from the community's adoption of the pipeline, and it helps us to make it better for everybody. I always say, like, one of the advantages of the open source community is that one person hits a problem first, it gets fixed, we solve it for everybody, and it really strengthens the platform, which is a good reason to provide things out to the open source community. Another reason is it's not just kind of finding bugs, but it's also setting a direction for us. And this is something that, you know, as an employee of Snowplow, we don't hear a lot of, is kind of comment on our strategic direction. Why are you making that decision? Why do you want to go this way? Have you ever thought of doing that? We would love to have more of those conversations with the community outside of this thing broke in this scenario, and ideally it would do this other thing. And we'd love to start a few more of those conversations with people and be more informed by the community, because we really trust your judgment as a large number of people who are really trying to stretch our technology. And we have a potential to build more of this system together. And this is where we hit another blocker. So the first blocker being the time to get started in the community, the second blocker being understanding the why to get to the point where you can commit that time. And the third thing is, like, where can you push the platform forward? And that's something that we've been working on, and something I'll hand over to Paul to talk to.
Hello. So thank you very much, Steve, for the introduction. So I'm Paul, I'm head of engineering, and yeah, I'm going to introduce really something we're calling integrations. This is some of it's new, some of it's old, but rethought, that I'm going to talk about today. And yeah, some of it doesn't exist yet, some of it will exist soon, some of it already exists. So yeah, bear with me, but I'm trying to like open, I guess, discussion on some of these topics, and maybe a little bit of yeah, thought-provoking stuff for us to maybe discuss a little bit later in this session. So we'll move on, Steve. So I'm going to start with Igloo, and the thing that Alex mentioned earlier. Igloo, just to recap, is the machine-readable open source schema registry JSON schemas. This defines the shape of all of the data that people typically track into a Snowplow pipeline. And currently, really the top two of these two big boxes are where most people have or store their Igloo schemas. So there's Igloo Central, the Snowplow managed and maintained Igloo repository. This is a great place for those core schemas that are vital for your Snowplow pipeline to run as you would expect. And then there's the private Igloo servers, the servers that most pipelines will have their own private Igloo server for the schemas that are really specific to your organization, that allow you to do the really specific things to solve for the business logic that you've got in your org. Now, one of the things we would like to sort of promote is sometimes some of these like private Igloo schemas, they might be useful for that wider community. But there's not a great place currently to get them out and share them with the world. You could technically submit them to Igloo Central. However, Igloo Central is like I'll call it a dangerous place, for lack of a better word. We have to tread very carefully with the schemas that are in Igloo Central. An issue with a schema that launched in Igloo Central has the potential to cripple pipelines. So we are very, very careful with what we release to Igloo Central, very thoughtful. So we need to be very comfortable with the testing and with the rollout of all of those schemas. For community authored schemas, it's hard for us to have the confidence that we will be able to effectively maintain that schema going forwards. So what we're looking at introducing is a community destination to publish your schemas. These likely won't be hosted, so they won't have that same danger that Igloo Central has. But there'll be a place for you to browse and go to find community authored schemas with a description and an understanding of its purpose for you to download and put onto your own private Igloo server. Think of it like a marketplace for schemas. And then maybe that spawns other Igloo repositories. Maybe people will host community editions schemas. They're pretty simple to host in reality, but that's maybe just a wish for what the future might hold. All right, we'll move on. The other play, the second thing of the three that I'm going to talk about today, is our move towards destinations. So we realized that the Snowplow's got this huge value in the data coming in, landing in the warehouse, and then people activating that data in the warehouse or activating that data directly off the stream, the real-time streams that Snowplow gives you access to. But there was definitely a number of like organizations that wanted to get that data into other places, not just the warehouse. One thing that emerged over probably the last 12 months really is something called reverse ETL. And this technology partners really well with Snowplow, and I thought was worth a mention. There's providers like Census and HighTouch that are doing great stuff over in that space. And that's good for taking the aggregated data in the warehouse and shifting it off to other systems like Salesforce. And what it's maybe not so good at is thinking about these things in real time. So that forwarding of that event level data, of that user behavior. So when the user does a very particular thing on a particular tool, triggering some sort of downstream behavior of that easily. So also, as we had this sort of realization, Google announced Google Tag Manager server side, and it felt like a really good early complementary technology for us to leverage to try the waters here, to see what was going on in this space. And it's something that you deploy yourself. So it matches that like first party ecosystem that we promote so heavily with Snowplow. Google were giving us the same tooling here to allow you to do something to accept event data and distribute that to multiple destinations. Now, what's interesting here is there's multiple sort of levels of, for Google Tag Manager services in particular, there's sort of like vendor or community authored tags in their marketplace. And we've also started producing these Snowplow enhanced tags. These are tags that work really well with Snowplow data. And that's where we really want, we want more feedback. We want people to maybe try and use these, maybe even build your own tags that work really well with Snowplow events from the Snowplow trackers. And then lastly, we've got these native integrations. And this is something I won't touch on too much today, but perhaps something to keep your eye out for the future in the next 12 months, is the idea of relaying this data directly into other platforms. Indicative already exists and has for a long time as a relay, but new ones such as Kafka, other event stream technologies, and maybe even relaying them into Google server side as well, which we'll touch on in a slide or two. Let's move forward. Told you it'd be slick. Right. So this is what it looks like, just to give you a really quick insight into the server-side tag manager from Google. So you have your tracker on your website like you probably used to, but instead of sending it directly to your Snowplow pipeline, you send it into the Google Tag Manager server-side container. There's a Snowplow client that reads these events. It builds this common object, and then this object, this client object in between, can then be sent to multiple destinations. So you can continue forwarding it to your Snowplow pipeline. There's a number of Snowplow author tags that work really well with any data collected by a Snowplow client. But then there's this wider community of author tags as well, such as sending your data into Google Analytics V4, maybe Facebook ads, maybe TikTok ads. There's all sorts of different vendor and community author tags that are available already, and it's still quite a young piece of technology. So we're excited to be part of this sort of community as well, integrating with other tools like Google Tag Manager server side. If we move forward one more slide. So we see it in two ways. The thing I've just discussed is sort of what's grayed out at the bottom, where you're doing Snowplow into GTM server side and then onto other destinations. However, we think there's a really interesting use case here where you first track directly into your Snowplow pipeline, but then by leveraging the real-time capabilities, you then relay that enriched, validated data from Snowplow into Google Tag Manager server side. And then you take just that enriched data that's already gone into your warehouse, you play that then into your third-party tools that you want to send the data into. Now, the thing you might be thinking here is there's a missing piece of technology. Steve clicks the mouse. I'll show you where it is. It's right there. And that is this little link between the back of your Snowplow pipeline and sending that data into Google Tag Manager server side. So over the next period of time, we've already started building it. There's a new piece of technology on the horizon for us that's going to help everybody do this. It's already part of the paid product of Snowplow. We're currently working on how we can reshape that and provide it to the open source community. So that's something that we're looking into very deeply at the moment, and we're very optimistic we'll be able to provide in the future. Not only does that support this Google Tag Manager server side thing, but it'll also give you the capability of other destinations as well, particularly ones that are well suited to Snowplow data. Like maybe you want your data in Azure or something, or you want it in a Kafka cluster for the other parts of your organization, things like that. That's where it's particularly well suited. Which then on the next slide allows you to do basically what I've just described: Snowplow pipeline, and then into the Google Tag Manager server side, and then using these other tools downstream. Just as one idea of what maybe you could do with this technology. All right, let's move on to the last thing I want to quickly talk about, and that is data modeling, which is another opportunity to integrate with Snowplow data. So this data modeling, when we use this, in a few places, this term, and basically what we're talking about is taking that raw data that you collect, that granular user behavior, and that's coming from all of these different tools, and aggregating that up into these modeled tables that make it easier to perform analytics on the data that you've collected. So that's it in a nutshell. And what we've invested in quite heavily over the last 12 months is supporting DBT and partnering with DBT to make it easier, one, to use, to do this modeling, but also to give the opportunity for the community to maybe get a little bit more involved in this modeling effort as well. So if you move to the next slide, you'll see that there's a number of Snowplow author tags, sorry, not tags, DBT models. So we've got Snowplow Web and Snowplow Mobile. Those two are already out today. Currently in development is something called Snowplow Media, which is particularly focused on video tracking right now. And then maybe in the not too distant future, you'll see Snowplow e-commerce as well. All of these built on DBT's platform, all available in the DBT hub for you to use. And if there'll be certain tracking that you need to do based on those Igloo schemas that I discussed earlier, that'll drive your ability to just deploy these models in DBT, and it'll aggregate that data up into something much more usable. And what we really want to start promoting and hearing more about what the community is doing is these models, particularly the web one and the mobile one, they're open to extension. There's extension points in here where you can plug in your own logic using your own custom schemas. So if we're publishing schemas into the community Igloo space, the one that doesn't exist yet, but maybe will shortly, we could then have companion extensions to the models. This is a future state that we'd love to start seeing happening. People talking about these things, releasing these things, and sharing with one another. And then maybe we even have like separate Snowplow use case community authored packages based on these community schemas. And then it's likely we would love to start seeing in Igloo Central, there's going to be like vendor schemas too that are in there already. And potentially will continue being in there through our partners and partnerships that we have. We may start seeing some Snowplow vendor authored packages as well for Snowplow collected data in these downstream platforms. That's about it from me. So I'm going to hand back to Steve, who's just going to give you a bit more of an idea around that community vendor Snowplow split.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I've killed video. I'm really sorry about that. I've been on the wrong Wi-Fi all day. You find out at 6 o'clock that everyone's had poor feed from me all day. But I'm really excited by this strategy that we have, because I think it does two things. One is it helps the community to more quickly activate on Snowplow, because they'll have a wider variety of kind of common use cases to pull from. But also it gives an area of the estate that's much easier for people to contribute to. And I think those two marry up quite well, because activation is such a broad area. There's so many things you can do with Snowplow, and by engaging the community on this and providing these areas where it's much easier for them to contribute means that we should get more of them. And I think the things that have made it difficult to contribute is one, the area of the estate with the community has to be protective of the pipeline. It's really important that we make sure that any additions there don't compromise the security or the performance or the ability to cost optimize or scale that part of the operations. So it's a bit that we have to be really protective over, but there's some areas of the estate where it is a lot easier to extend, as Paul's covered, integrations and schemas and modeling and just general data strategies to solve interesting problems. So I think that's a much easier place to contribute, and we're looking forward to seeing more come from there. And I think one of the main blockers we have is actually a non-technical blocker, though, which is just we as a community have not been very good at labeling things as like experimental. We've got something coming out soon in Enrich that's very experimental. It's probably not where it should be. It's not going to cause any harm to anyone who's not using it, but if anyone wants to come along for the ride, they can turn it on and get some interesting information out of Enrich. But as soon as we're out of that stage and we decide actually that is worth pursuing, there's some interesting use cases that come off, we're going to want to refactor it and put it into an alpha service that we'll invite the community to support us on, and then push it into beta and then into the main Snowplow product. I think Snowplow community product. But the way that it works now is any contribution is straight on to the main line of the application. And that's a quite difficult place to accept contributions to. And the other thing is to be able to label those contributions to say, this set of models is from the community, or it's vendor supported, or it's Snowplow supported. And I think the only difference in the second two is the extent to which people are being paid to invest in this stuff. Like a vendor has a very invested, will have people on their payroll invested in making sure that thing continues to work ongoing, and Snowplow are very invested in the product itself and the of it. So I think that's the only facets there. But I think understanding where the integration comes from can make it so that we're more liberal about what gets accepted into the ecosystem. So that's a non-technical change. It's just a matter of us putting some rules in place and finding out how we're going to articulate that back to the community. So yeah, that's it. There's some changes that are coming in the community for 22. I appreciate some of you have been with the community for some time. Might recognize some of the challenges that we're talking about here today, and anyone who's new to the community will hopefully be encouraged by the fact that it's a lot easier to get involved in the Snowplow community and to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve together here today than it has been previously, and we plan to improve that a lot over 2022.